Welcome to Uncle's Channel. Thanks for watching today. Let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy Color game. Today, focus on a game called Mickey's Dangerous Chase for the original Game Boy. This is a game like I played a little bit growing up, but I never actually had the game, so I never had the full experience going from start to finish. And with this challenge, going through the entire game, it changed my mind a little bit on this game because this game is 100% the Game Boy version of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I can't find anywhere on the internet it's official, what happened in production or whatnot, but this has to be the Game Boy version of Chip and Dale. There are so many sprites from Chip and Dale on the NES poured over to Game Boy here. The gameplay mechanics of picking up the box and throwing the box, exactly the same as it was in Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I mean, there are so many things in this game that is definitely going to be Chip and Dale. I refuse to believe this was not at one point or another in production Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers for the Game Boy. And this is why I say I gained a new perspective on this game, because I adore Chip and Dale on the NES, and being able to play a handheld version of it just simply with Mickey Mouse instead of Chip and Dale, I don't know, it made me like the game a whole lot more. Now, this particular game did get moved up in the queue a good bit because the Swill Man requested I cover Mickey's Dangerous Chase sooner than later, so naturally I moved it to the top of the queue here. We're covering it today, and if there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of that game in the comments down below, and just like Mickey's Dangerous Chase, I'll move it up the queue and cover it as fast as I possibly can. But let's go ahead and dive into the Game Boy version, as I'm going to call it anyway, of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. And before we get too far into this, I do want to apologize for my voice going out. Obviously, it's allergy season, and it's affecting me just as bad as anybody else out there. But next week, I hope that the voice will be back to normal 100%. Now, I'd like to start the videos out by looking at the box art for the game first. And the box art for Mickey's Dangerous Chase summarized the game pretty much perfectly, because the story for the game is Pete has stolen Mickey's present that he had for Minnie, and you are basically just chasing Pete through all these different worlds and these environments, trying to get the present back. And right here you have Mickey Mouse chasing Pete. He's got the present in his hand. He's running through the level called the Shack inside the game, and I mean, it's exactly what the game is about. But even the stuff in the background makes an appearance inside the game, like the little spider web on the staircase. That is the exact same shape as the spider web inside the game. Goofy's inside the game. The little flower pots, those fall from the sky inside the game. And so they actually did a pretty good job summarizing and stuffing as much as they could into one single image to represent the game here. And so good cover. Now, when you start the actual game up here, of course, the title screen has Mickey and Minnie on it, and you can play as either one of them inside the game. And even the title screen here, the layout of it, of having the two characters, the title down below it, even that looks like Chip and Dale. And Mickey looks like he's holding up a number 3 in his hand. So I'm going to assume that this is Chip and Dale Part 3 as we go. And so if you wait just a second, the storyline does begin. And the story is a pretty weak story. Mickey has gotten a present from Minnie. He puts it out on the table. He tells Minnie about it. She gets all excited. They go over to the table. The present is gone. And you find out from Goofy that Pete has stolen the present. And so you're basically going to travel through all these levels trying to find Pete to get the present back in order to give it to Minnie. And so very weak story, but that's essentially the reason and motivation for Mickey to be going after Pete. Now, when you begin the game, there are 5 stages that you're going to go through, 3 levels in each stage. And the first stage is going to focus on Mickey's hometown. And of course, the first stage here is just simply going to be outside of Mickey's house. And of course, when you start the game up here, you do have 2 choices of who you want to play as. You can play as Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse, just like I would assume in the original Game Boy version of Chip and Dale, you could have chosen Chip or Dale to play as. And I'm going to start off playing as Mickey, but there's really no difference between the 2 characters because I'm going to play as Minnie a little bit later on. And so when you start the game up, you can notice immediately he looks more like a Steamboat Mickey or Steamboat Willie from the old animated cartoon from years and years ago. I like that version of Mickey Mouse, so I actually like the animation for the sprite here. But as you're going through here, you're going to notice so much in this level looks like Chip and Dale. Like the boxes, you can pick them up and you can throw them just like in Chip and Dale. You can throw them forward, you can throw them up. You can't pull them down over your head like you could in Chip and Dale. But most of the time of Game Boy games, they had to make some sort of sacrifice from the NES counterpart. And so that was probably lost somewhere in the mix. But even the enemies, the little dogs that are coming at you, very similar to the dogs that were in Chip and Dale. The flowers in the background on the little fence rows look very similar to the flowers inside of Chip and Dale here. And we're going to notice as we go further into the game, more of the enemies are also going to appear just like they were in Chip and Dale. But as you're traveling through here, you can collect different items and whatnot. You can collect stars. If you get 100 of those, you get an extra life. And you're going to also notice some of the boxes you can pick up are actually little question marks. If you pick those up, a little item will come out of them. Sometimes they're like an extra heart. Sometimes they'll be like an extra amount of stars. Sometimes they're going to be like a little potion to give you like invincibility, so like star power. And so it's always beneficial to go after the question mark blocks, just simply to get yourself a little bit of a bonus here. But the level is very short. You get to the end, you find Goofy, and Goofy didn't alert you that Pete was here, but he's traveled on to the shopping center, which leads us into our next level. Now we're still in Mickey's hometown here, so it's sort of a similar aesthetic, but instead of having dogs in this particular one, we're now going to have weasels. And once again, the weasel is something that was also in Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers for the NES. Now there is one new enemy that's particular for just this game. There's going to be the fire hydrant here. And I love the little animation for the fire hydrant as like, you know, sort of rears back, gets ready to shoot the water at you. And you have to hit the fire hydrant 3 separate times before it can actually be destroyed. And so it's neat to have your own enemies inside the game as well. But this level here does expand the game a little bit as far as like adding underground worlds that you can go into. Instead of just simply a straight, you know, left to right platformer, you use a little bit to explore and try to find all the little question mark blocks, because some of them do have like a little coin inside of them. I forgot to mention that earlier. And if you collect all 4 coins inside of a level, you do get an extra life at the close of the level. And so, I don't know, it's fun to explore, try to find all the coins inside the level. It's a extra little challenge for you as you go. But this level is very similar to the first one as far as like the gameplay mechanics. However, when you get to stage 3 here, you've been alerted by Goofy that Pete is trying to cross the lake. And so now Mickey Mouse gets to get inside of a boat and he's traveling across the lake to go after Pete. And this changes the gameplay mechanic pretty much 100%. It's now a automatic side scroller for you. And you're simply going left to right in your little boat here, trying to avoid all the fish, trying to avoid all the little obstacles, little crates and whatnot. And of course, try to collect as many items as you can as you go. And the first time I went through it, I tried to collect like every single item that I could. And I died multiple times doing that. And finally, I was just like, you know, forget the items, just simply make it to the end. It was a whole lot easier that way. And there's really no reason to collect the items because the game does have unlimited continues. And so like getting extra life is not going to help you like a ton inside the game. And so you can, for the most part, just sort of go left to right for the majority of the levels, unless you sort of want to go for a completionist attitude. But when you get to the other side of the lake, of course, Goofy is over there. He says, hey, you just missed Pete just by a second, and he's moved on into the woods. And that's going to be sort of Goofy's, I don't know, mentality or Goofy's standby line here for the entire game. You were so close. He was just here, but he's already left. And so now you have to continue on your journey. And that leads us into stage 2 here, which is going to be the woods. And for this stage, I did try Minnie Mouse just to make sure there were no differences between the two characters. And there are no differences except for the sprite animation. But as you're going through here, you're going to have these little flying squirrels coming down from the trees. And you're never going to guess which game also had flying squirrels coming down from the trees inside of a wooded level. Rescue Rangers on the NES. And so you got these little flying squirrels coming down. They can throw like little nuts down at you as well. Or at least little rolling nuts are coming across the screen trying to hit you. And this level here is a great looking level. I love the background wooded area. I love the foreground wooded area. It is a very simple platforming game for the most part, but they did a good job like adding a lot of charm into it, because Capcom and Disney have always done a good job of like creating charm inside their game. And this game is no different, even though I feel like they did the sprite swaps. But then you head on to stage 2-2, which is also a forest aesthetic, but it's a different type of forest aesthetic. And I love that they actually like took the time to swap it up a little bit instead of just simply making the game, you know, continue in the same direction. They also added a new enemy in here called the bear. Well, not called a bear, it is a bear. And you can actually ride on the bear's back, which is also just sort of a charming aspect to add to the game. Like I said, Disney and Capcom, they knew how to bring the charm, and it's no different for this particular game. But honestly, the wooded stage area here is probably one of my favorites because I love the forest aesthetic, and they did a great job with it. Now in 2-3, you're alerted by Goofy that Pete is climbing the mountain, so naturally you have to have your little balloons ready. You have to travel up the mountain going after Pete, and as you're going up there, little parrots are going to try to run into you, burst your balloons, make you fall down. And truth be told, this is actually a pretty hard little level as you're traveling up the mountain. However, if you can just simply avoid the first few little birds that come at you, they give you plenty of hearts to try to refill your health as you're going up there. And you can make it as long as you sort of get a good start on the level. The first part is definitely the hardest part. But I like how they tried to mix the gameplay up a little bit on the third level of each one of these stages. And I don't know, I enjoy, you know, the little balloon stage here. But as I was going through the balloon stage here, I also started to think back, like, wasn't there a part in Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers? Like if you're playing 2-player mode, if one player got killed, you came back like holding a little balloon, you know, try to appear back on the stage a little bit. And so even the balloon part, I believe, I'm not positive, is pulled from Chip 'n Dale as well. Now when you get to the end of the level, Goofy once again says, hey, you just barely missed him. He's moved on to the mountains. And he has an interesting quote here. He says he escaped down the prairie dog's hole. And I was like, hang on, like, what a weird way to say it. Like, are there actual prairie dogs like in the mountains? Like, I'm not sure. I'm going to Google that real quick. Indeed, they do live in high mountain areas. I just sort of assumed since they were called prairie dogs, they lived in the flat grasslands. But evidently, according to this, they also live in high mountain valleys. So Goofy is 100% correct, and it makes sense because in the next stage, there are going to be plenty of prairie dogs. Some that come out of their little holes and try to attack you. Some are just simply walking across the little prairie or walking across the mountains. They're trying to attack you. So the prairie dogs are going to be like your main enemy in the next level. And of course, they are, truth be told, pretty cute as they're going back and forth. And also, you have little eagles in this area. It actually reminds me more of the Disney movie Rescuers Down Under, or I guess the Rescuers, which I don't think is any relation to Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, but still, it reminds me a little bit of that. When you finish up stage 3-1 here, Goofy says that Pete has moved on into the shack area. And so you go into a little shack here. Of course, it's a broken down or dilapidated little house. And you have bats and you have spiders. You got the little spider web from the cover of the game as well. There are some tricky jumps inside this particular level, and when you get to the end of it, Goofy then says Pete has now headed back down the mountain. So in 3-3 here, you don't just simply get your balloons back out and float down the mountain. You hop from bird to bird and journey your way down the mountain that way. And so you basically ride one bird until he moves off to the side of the screen, hop off onto another one, ride on him as long as you can. He runs off to the side of the screen, hop on another bird. Very, very easy level. But man, like they did a good job just bringing a lot of charm to the game, a lot of variety to the game, and up to this point, the game has been a pretty excellent platformer, at least in my opinion. But all that's going to change in level 4 here because this is a absolutely atrocious level inside the game. And I think for the vast majority of players, like when you get into level 4 here or stage 4, this is where the game is actually going to end for you. Because no matter how many continues you have, like your number of lives that you have inside of a particular level, you're going to lose them all with these impossible jumps as you go through. Now 4-1 is the warehouse, and it's the easiest of level 4. But as you're going through it, there's all these little blocks you can pick up, and there's only one enemy. So like a lot of charm is gone. Looks like a little black spiny ball. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a spider web, a spider. I don't know. It's indestructible. You can't get rid of it, and you just sort of end up flopping down on you if you pull a block out in the wrong spot. But this level here, there's a lot of really difficult jumps to go with it, and it's just sort of a puzzle on like which path you need to go on. An annoying level, not my favorite in any form or fashion. But 4-2, the factory level, my lord, this is like the hardest thing the game has to offer here. There's these little conveyor belts all throughout it. There are spikes galore throughout the level, frame perfect jumps, and I mean like literally frame perfect jumps as you're trying to go through this. And it's not like 1 or 2. There's like 10 or 15 locations in this short level where you have to have like frame perfect jumps to jump over these spikes. And I'm telling you, like there's no checkpoints in it as well. So if you die, you have to go back to the very beginning of the level. And my lord, it's a very annoying level. I really do feel like the majority of players would never get past this as kids playing the game unless they were like exceptionally good at the video game. And this is one thing that is definitely different from like the NES Chip 'n Dales, because those games were pretty easy, that most players could beat them even at a young age. And this game here, up to this point, was similar difficulty wise as Chip 'n Dale, but this one is far harder than anything Chip 'n Dale and the NES would have ever put forth for players. Now when you get to the end of the level, Goofy does say that Pete has gotten in his car, driven off to town, so Mickey then has to get in his car, and you go through a level that's very similar to like City Connection here, because you're jumping from floor to floor inside your car as you're moving left to right, trying to avoid all of the enemies, get some items as you go. It's a pretty good level, mixes up the pace a little bit. Definitely the best part of stage 4 here. Doesn't really fit with the rest of stage 4, and so stage 4-1, 4-2 are the worst parts in the entire game. And stage 4-3 feels like the rest of the game before stage 4. Now level 5 is going to be what's called the business district, and so now you're chasing even closer after Pete here. Stage 5-1 is a fine stage. It's nothing like really special. Little tires are coming at you, little oil cans inside the level as well. I've never really liked like city levels a whole lot, and this is very much of a city level. So it's not like my favorite, but it's not a bad level inside the game. 5-2 is a self-scrolling level, and it reminds me a lot of a level inside Chip 'n Dale, where they actually throw like pots out the windows at you. And sure enough, inside this level, as you're journeying from bottom to top, pots are going to come flying down from the top of the screen at you from the windows. Once again, harkening back to what is probably should have been a Chip 'n Dale game. And as you're journeying up the screen here, it's actually fairly annoying because you have to pick like the direct path that you're supposed to go on. If you choose a different path, you pretty much doomed yourself. And so you basically have to play this level over and over and over until you memorize what is the correct path up the building here. And I don't know, that's a little bit on the annoying side, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. And then the final stage here, of course, you chase after Pete across the rooftops here. And when you finally get to him, he's the only boss battle inside the entire game. And they made a pretty tough boss battle because you have to go up and you have to get this one little crate right in front of him and then throw it at him and avoid all these little balls that he's throwing at you. And it took me a few different tries to actually get down his pattern as far as like how he's throwing the items at you. But once you understand his pattern, it's pretty easy boss battle. But you do have to go through it multiple times to understand that pattern because it's not a really easy one to read at least your first couple tries through. Now when you do defeat Pete, you get the little present that's behind him, and that's the present that was meant for Minnie Mouse at the very beginning of the game. Mickey then gets the present. Pete runs off into the distance, you know, crying because he's lost his battle, lost the present, lost his, I don't know, his self-esteem, I guess, as you go. And so Mickey Mouse gives the present to Minnie. She opens it up, and it's a little bird inside there. And it says, like, the bird is now safe. And it's like a very, very odd story for the game. I'm not really sure, like, what the story was supposed to be for Chip and Dale, but I can guarantee you it was not this story, and this was just sort of pasted in there last second. It's awful story. Just doesn't make any sense. But then the credits begin to roll here, go through the entire cast, and that is of course the end of Mickey's Dangerous Chase. But let's talk about it as an overall and how I would rank this game. Now, like I said earlier, and many times throughout the review, this is definitely supposed to be a Chip and Dale game for the Game Boy. And in that aspect, I feel like it does carry on the Chip and Dale legacy pretty well. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the NES Chip and Dales, but those are like fantastic games, and those can't be beaten when it comes to a side-scrolling game. But as far as like standing in its own right as sort of a Game Boy port of Chip and Dale, I think it's a really fun game, especially Worlds 1, 2, and 3. Top tier, fun games, fun backgrounds, fun aesthetics, fun enemies, fun gameplay mechanics, really great levels inside of the game. Stage 4 was definitely the worst stage, and it felt like it was sort of put in there as far as like a skill check, or maybe like a level to sort of slow players down from finishing the game too fast to extend the playtime. And a lot of games of this time period did that, you know, make a really difficult part of the game. So, you know, it took players many tries to finish it. And that way the game felt like it was a lot longer than what it was. And I feel like that's what Stage 4 was, but they really just made it just not a fun stage in any form or fashion. There were almost no enemies in it. It was a very ugly aesthetic. The difficulty was way too high. Stage 4, awful stage, really did knock the game back a little bit. Stage 5 was a fine ending to the game. Nothing really special about it. But I'm telling you, like, the best part of this game, stages 1, 2, and 3, and if you're only going to play any of this game, I mean, play stage 1, 2, and 3, and you've got pretty much the best experience this game has to offer. Now, the music inside the game is pretty charming, start to finish. Several of the songs keep up with the Disney Capcom, you know, catchiness as far as like getting stuck in your head. A good soundtrack as an overall. And so for me personally, I actually like this game quite a bit. Growing up, like I said, I played at some friends' house and whatnot, just here and there, and it felt like sort of a average platformer. Didn't really think a whole lot about it. But going back and looking at it now and seeing like how it's sort of a Chip and Dale type game, and seeing all the charm behind it, like I like the game a good bit more. It's still not a perfect game. It's still not going to live up to Chip and Dale standards. There are some levels and stages in the game that are going to knock the score down a little bit. But I feel like a solid 6 for this game is probably a pretty good score for it. I feel like if they had eliminated level 4 and replaced it with something else, it could have probably been a solid 7. But as it stands at the moment, I'm going to put this game as a 6 on my ranking scale. But what do you all think? Did you enjoy Mickey's Dangerous Chase? Let me know in the comments down below what you would personally rate the game. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner or later, let me know the name of that game in the comments down below as well. And as always, go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.